Great. And Stephen.
So hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Machia, your Public Works Director.
Great, thanks. And Mayor Rock, last but not least.
Oh, Adam Rack, Mayor of San Carlos. I've been in town since 2001.
Great.
And I walk downtown. I don't know if I live as close as David does, but we'll have to pace it off at some point.
Excellent.
Jim, I should also say that I'm a member of the DTAC committee, so I forgot.
Okay, right. Yes, I remember you from our session.
Yes, so
Great.
I did want the other people to know that. So
great. Well, thanks for joining. So I think everyone kind of knows the ground rules. We want to be respectful with each other. We also want to be concise because we do want to hear all voices. Just make sure everybody has a chance to get their thoughts and ideas out here. We've kind of got a structure, and I'm going to share my screen so that everyone can see the Miro board and share. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, great. And then I'm just going to sort of navigate us through the Miro board. It starts with guiding principles, as you can see here, as the first board, and then we're going to go down to the 700 block schemes that were presented as part of our presentation. So we've got those two different alternatives, the promenade and the garden, and then we're going to go ahead and spend a little time on the 600 block, which I think can also be representative of the 800 block with some of the ideas. And then we have, for reference, we have some of the cross-sectional studies that you can see here across these three boards on the bottom. And then lastly, these sort of four circulation options that are looking at the little bit bigger picture of how people move into and around downtown in order to protect this pedestrian core. So, we don't want to be too strict about, yes, we have to have comments on every board, but we would like to cover the range of ideas here if possible. But certainly if people want to focus in certain areas, we're free to do that. So yeah, I just want to open it up. Sabina is going to take some notes as we go. Are there any sort of general thoughts about, just what's driving this? What kind of downtown people are really interested in having something that might be more on the level of the vision and the guiding principles? Just sort of general comments about intent of what what people want for San Carlos in their downtown. Anything on that? Okay. All right, well, maybe we got that pretty close in the vision statement. Any thoughts about these two different approaches to the 700 block, the promenade versus the gardens approach? Are there, and I can zoom in on each one individually, it's what we're looking at here is not only sort of the physical arrangement, this very urban and linear versus a little bit more garden-like, but also the kinds of program elements that are important. What do we want to make sure we don't miss in terms of the activities and the types of spaces that we want to have downtown? Any thoughts on that?
Honestly, it's hard for me to see the difference between those.
Okay, I can.
It might just be because the diagram, the vast majority of it is just the white blocks.
Yeah.
Like the tree cover has like subtle differences. So
yeah, well, that's really what it is. This one, if I've zoomed in a little bit more, so maybe you can I don't know what kind of screen you're working with, but this one is just more linear. It's more urban. It tends to be like more of a formal promenade. If you think of Las Ramblas, in Barcelona, it's that sort of arrangement. Whereas this other one is a little bit more organic. So these groves of trees are grouped, on one side or the other, and then the path through the space sort of snakes back and forth between those groves. And that's not to say that we wouldn't have a similar amount of space for programming, for outdoor dining, but it's just a little bit different feel. This has got a little bit more of that sort of park element introduced and a little bit less of that sort of formal urban plaza. So I think those are the main differences.
Do you scroll down to the pictures?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those look.
So this one shows this idea of the groves that are either on one side or the other, right here where it says curbless plaza. And then there's this idea of a linear fountain, which is more in this central space, the central plaza space, and then, just event spaces for outdoor movies, plenty of space for seating, and, it's not shown here, but a robust border area on either side for outdoor dining.
I like the linear approach personally. I think it gives equal access for all the businesses as opposed to some that have the trees more in front of them and then on the other side back and forth. So I feel like it's more equal for all the restaurants and all the businesses. But that's my personal take on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's some images, what that could look like. This is one from Ithaca, and it's more formal. It's a little bit more linear, and yeah, as you say, Manette, maybe a little bit more equitable in terms of the amount of space allocated on the edges for outdoor dining.
I like the idea of having it sort of winding and in a way that if you're standing on, so I'm talking about the other one, just to be clear, that
Yeah.
if you're standing on one end, you can't really see through to the other end. And there's sort of these like pockets of little different sort of character tucked into the block
Yeah.
that I think might, in the best cases, make it feel sort of like cozy. Compared to, I'm thinking of, in the middle of some days walking down Laurel Street now, when there aren't a lot of people there, it feels sort of like empty
Mm-hmm.
and not, it feels like it has a huge potential to be like huge and bustling, but it's not there when you go there. So there's a little, I think that if it's winding, the like your line of sight always has like a tree or something a bit smaller in it where
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't show
This
people. It
this
feels more
notion,
vibrant, easier.
yeah. It's a notion that a space is successful whether it's filled or empty, that it's sort of has a certain scale to it.
Mhm.
And it doesn't, you don't feel like it's abandoned because there's enough vertical and enough articulation of some sort. And maybe what would be important on a scheme, to Manette's point, is that where the path comes close to the outside edge like this, we still want to make sure that there's sort of a minimum dimension there that accommodates outdoor dining, and so that this guy over here doesn't get a huge amount of outdoor dining. That was not very well drawn. We want
Yeah.
this frontage over here to still have enough to do their dining operations. So, and
How would it be like when you have the Halloween thing and the Christmas lights and you're trying to do some program down in the plaza, if it's kind of weavy? That's part of it too. I was thinking it gives you more of an open space in the middle to have all the activities that we try to have now at these other events when the street is closed. Seems like it would be a little more.
Yeah, so certain activities, you're saying, Monette, really need a nice big space where those activities can manifest,
Right.
whether it be this space or maybe the central plaza space, but there's enough there where you can really have an event, and it feels like you know, there's sort of a critical mass of activity associated with that event.
Yeah, because like, you know, on the Halloween night, they have, you know, things for kids to do and all these, you know, things that are set up on this in the open space. So it just seems like it lends itself more if it's down, not quite so weedy and windy.
Yeah, yeah, that you've got some spaces that are big enough to be flexible and accommodate those different kinds of activities. Yeah, that makes sense.
Since it does mention fire access for both options, um, does that mean that like the smallest part of the gardens would still be quite large, like large enough for a fire truck or other
Yeah,
emergency vehicles to
yeah,
navigate through?
exactly. So, I forget what the exact width requirement, Stephen, you might have to help with that, but if it's 25 or 26 feet, that would be the minimum that you would need to have in any area that goes down to a you know, just a central pathway, so that emergency vehicles could still circulate through there, and that would meet your code.
Right, Jim. The width that they need for all the outriggers is typically a 20 foot.
20 foot. Okay,
20
there
foot,
you go.
Right.
By the way, something for you guys to think about is we will need a spokesperson just to sort of portray the general nature of the discussion we had in our group once we have the report back. So any of you that feel that you might like to do that,
I'm not going to volunteer for it. I unfortunately I have to jump, so I will. But I appreciate the feedback and everything so far.
Yeah. So David or Monette or Nels, if one of you could think about, yeah, if you could do a brief report back to the larger group once we end our session, that would be great.
Gotcha.
So
Could I read from the notes that someone is taking?
Yeah.
Or else I could just say what I think.
so Jim,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
One thing,
Yeah.
that I'd really like to see in general is more like public seating and sort of not just seating, but like picnic table kind of thing. Like if I take out food or bring my own food or something like that, like right now there's only Harrington Park and like the few chess tables and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. So more just open public seating. That could be in a bench format. It could be in a table and chair format, but it's
Yeah.
non-proprietary. It's like you don't have to sit down at a restaurant to have that. You can just go and have those spaces on your own with your own food.
Yeah. And particularly like with a surface to like occupy that space, or like spend time on your computer or do something, rather than like a bench is nice to kind of like watch things go by and talk one-on-one with somebody, but it's a bit more limited. And I think that
Yeah, but tables
Yeah.
and chairs, I mean, that's done a lot in public spaces. Is there's just public tables and chairs that are out there. And, of course, we would need to think about how are those secured, and is there management capacity to put them away each night, or do they need to be fixed and permanent? But there's many ways that you could do that and have the kind of spaces that you're talking about.
Yeah, we talked about that at DTAC as well. I think
Mhm.
that it's nice, and even like employees of some of the businesses could take their lunch outside. You might bring lunch from home. Now you see people outside bianchinis sitting on the benches eating the food they just bought in the grocery store for lunch. So there really is nowhere to sit, you know,
Yeah.
and enjoy eating that takeout food you just bought.
Yeah, and if, you know, we've heard a lot about how do we have more opportunities for small local vendors to come out here? Can we have more of these pop-ups? So if there's going to be even more opportunities to buy food that's, you know, affordable for everyone, you know, sort of have that diversity of price ranges. Yes, you still have your restaurants that you have now, but you also have some other options. It's a way to encourage smaller businesses. If that kind of activity is growing, then, you know, that would suggest that you need even more of this type of public seating where people can sit and enjoy those things.
Yeah, I also like how it kind of blends the, people are just downtown existing, enjoying their time, like sitting. It's not that they're sitting at this restaurant versus
Yeah,
this restaurant versus sitting at this restaurant.
right.
I
They're
don't
just,
know if
yeah,
it's like officially like that, but at the near St. Carlos Avenue, there's like Starbucks, Poke, and the bagel place that all
Mhm.
have this that like just against the wall, they have these tables and chairs, which I definitely sit at them regardless of which one I'm at. And I
yeah.
like that feeling of it's just we're all
It's
downtown.
open,
We're not
open seating.
different
Yeah.
customers. And like, or maybe we're not even customers. Like it's important to have a place for people to exist and spend time at, even if they're not
Yeah,
paying.
yeah, that's great.
I got a
Okay,
question.
yeah.
Where does the labor standards fit in all this? You guys have any idea whether we're going to have like apprenticeships, prevailing wage, or healthcare in any of these projects?
Stephen, do you have a sense for that in terms of how some
So
of these public space
yeah,
contracts would work?
well, basically all our public contracts, Nels, I'm public works director, but all our public contracts that we have to go through, we do have to pay prevailing wage. That's a requirement. That's a state law that we have to do. Um, and so just in general, basically, I mean, I think that kind of covers one of your talk or your thoughts, but basically we would, want to ensure that the contractors that were hired kind of follow the prevailing wage and offers, their employees the appropriate benefits that are needed.
Okay. It's like apprenticeships too, though. Like we want to have the people that live in the area, go through apprenticeships and work in the area that they live in.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that's important with the carpenters over here at 217. We want labor standards implemented in a lot of these, kind of projects, so they have opportunities for the people that actually live in this community
Mm-hmm.
go to work to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, certainly, we would always, and in fact, as you probably just pointed out, I mean, this is a really big project. It's probably one of the bigger projects that we have in our community. We haven't quite, we're not there yet. We're still kind of in the planning mode and really trying to gather information from the community. So, but the intentions really is to, provide a lot of new jobs, and hopefully we're able to secure local folks that could work and live in our community to work on this project.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move us ahead here, and this is some excellent feedback on the 700 block. Unless someone has another important point they want to make there, can we sort of move to the 600 block, and we could either talk about Wheeler Plaza as another public space, but also I'd like to get some feedback on these two alternative approaches to the street cross section. So if you can see this enlargement here, these are two different ways of creating more sidewalk space. In the first instance, going from diagonal to parallel parking, we're getting roughly, if you look at the cross section, 9.5 plus 5, so almost 15 feet. Actually, that is 15 feet of sidewalk. because the tree strip is paved, right? There's permeable paving on top of the tree strip. So that's all usable space for circulation and outdoor dining. I can tell you that 15 feet sounds wide, but when you put a couple rows of tables out there, it gets constrained pretty quickly. But it can be done for sure, and it would be quite a large improvement from what's out there today. This other scheme where you have
What's the width today, just for comparison?
the width today. Okay, we don't have existing on here, but I think it's about 8 feet.
So 8 feet total,
8 feet total on one
including
side.
any tree strip.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So you're going from 8 to 15. This other option where you have parking just on one side, but it sort of switches back and forth. Here you have almost 20 feet, and that starts to be, pretty nice in terms of having really good, robust outdoor dining, and then still plenty of room for circulation. And an important thing to note here is that the idea, not only in the 700 block, but in the 600 and 800 blocks, is that you can do away with the need for the parklets. Those were sort of a response during COVID to get additional space, to protect those spaces from automobile, to work within the constraints of a narrow sidewalk. But if you have enough width in the sidewalk, you can put that outdoor dining right up against the storefronts, right? So it's a continuous function with the restaurant interiors, and then the circulation goes to the outside of that. It goes to the street side of that. So it's much more typical of what you might see, in cities where they have very well developed outdoor dining, nice wide sidewalks, and it sort of removes this whole notion of these barriers. The parklets, as beneficial as they have been over COVID, and I think also awakened everyone to the potential of a lot more outdoor socializing. Those are all really good outcomes, but a bad outcome is they've really kind of chopped up our street environments, and they've put these blockages out there. So, one of these types of schemes would create an opportunity to do away with that and have a much more free flowing space.
So I've actually been thinking about that. Exactly what you were saying, how the parklets are this like sort of half solution. It gives you an outdoor space, but you have like a pedestrian path cutting through the middle of it where servers are going in and out. It's not
Yeah,
really the best solution.
exactly.
So one thing I realized, I don't know, all of the parklets I think right now on the 700 block have like they were built, I guess, assuming that cars were coming back, and so they have a barrier.
Exactly. And
But
the
they also
orange
have,
barriers.
but they also have like the acrylic or plexiglass at
Mhm.
the roof, which I'm guessing is partly for like staying heated.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, just
wonder,
some protection from the elements. Yeah.
yeah, I wonder how that would work out. Because yeah, the idea of like an Italian or Parisian cafe that the chairs are just sort of spilling out, like I love that.
Yeah.
I just wonder if the restaurants and cafes here would still want some like enclosure
Yeah.
possibility, which would
Yeah.
kind of not be so nice circulation wise.
Well,
Yes.
they don't have the weather protection,
Yeah.
that the structures now have from wind and rain and stuff. But what they've done is really created like the middle of the 700 block is like an alley between two, because all you see is the backs of all those parklets. You don't see any of the nice, so I
Yeah.
mean, I think the goal is to get rid of the parklets, but the thing the restaurants will lose is the weather protection.
Although, if you think about how you gave the example of Paris, there's a whole language there of enclosure methods that they use for the outdoor sidewalks. In inclement weather, they've got these very nice enclosures. All of a sudden, You know, what might be an awning in the summer now has drop down panels, you know, and some of it is hard constructed, but some of it is just zippered panels, you know, with clear plastic. So I think it'll open up a whole new opportunity of how do you get those same protections in inclement weather, but that's all built now up against the building rather than out in a little pod on the street.
It'd probably be good to have. I'm just thinking, like, you know, I'm not a business owner at all, but these businesses invested money into building what they have now, and I guess getting the permits for it. And now, whenever this comes to fruition, they're going to have to kind of completely revamp it.
Yes.
Which is not, I'm sure they're not going to be too happy about that added cost. And so whatever kind of, if there's some design guide, something, not guide, because that'll constrain them, but something to sort of like ease into that. And then also on that note, I was talking to my buddy in San Mateo who was talking about how the city really poorly handled like the switch over from deep shelter in place, hey, everyone's got a parklet, to no, you need a more legitimate permit and legitimate structure. And I think just like suddenly one weekend, the city just kind of like forced everyone to tear down what they had currently. And they were able to do that because it was the permit or whatever was sort of like revocable. It was, which I assume we have now, where the business owner doesn't own that sidewalk. And so whatever investment that they might consider making to create that structure of the new nice openness, we got 60 seconds. Like it's still pretty tenuous if the city is allowed to, you know, change the rules in a few years. And I wonder if there's like something to think about of having that sidewalk not only like have a permit, but be able to be like owned by that business.
Or
like
at least
so they
an
can
easement
really,
agreement, something like
so it's like
that.
a real sense of like control and ownership, so it can encourage them to keep that investment nice.
That's
Can I make
excellent.
one comment about your parking on that first block before we lose it?
Yep.
If you've ever been in Burlingame and you watch, the problem with the parallel parking is that by the time somebody gets in the car to get out of that space and the wait for the next person to back in, the traffic backs all the way up down Burlingame Avenue. Because it takes